The dumpster behind Rosie's all-night diner reeked of rotting food and desperation. Maya Caldwell had smelled worse during her 3 years slinging hash to truckers and insomniacs, but tonight something was different. Tonight the garbage bags whispered. Not metaphorically. Not in her exhausted, single-mother imagination. Actually whispered, a sound so faint she almost convinced herself it was wind through the alley. Almost. Her hand, chapped from dishwater and tipped with chipped nail polish, hesitated over the dumpster lid. Her daughter Lily was alone upstairs in their cramped studio apartment. Maya's shift ended in 20 minutes. She should walk away. The whispering turned into a whimper. Maya's heart cracked open. She knew that sound, the cry of something small and abandoned, the plea of the helpless. She'd heard it in her own voice 6 years ago when Lily's father left, when the eviction notice came, when the hospital bills piled higher than hope. She opened the dumpster. Nestled between trash bags, wrapped in silk so fine it seemed woven from moonlight itself, lay an infant. Not human, she knew that instantly. The child's skin held an otherworldly pallor, and when those tiny eyes opened, they burned crimson in the dim alley light. But what stopped Maya's breath wasn't the supernatural nature of the child. It was the hospital bracelet still attached to one impossibly small wrist, and the note pinned to the silk, the cursed air. Let death claim what life rejected. Oh, sweetheart, Maya breathed, gathering the infant close despite every survival instinct screaming that this was dangerous, impossible, none of her business. Who could throw away something so precious? The baby's cries quieted the moment Maya's warmth surrounded her. Small fingers clutched Maya's stained uniform, and those crimson eyes locked onto hers with desperate recognition, as if this abandoned thing had been searching for her across lifetimes. Maya didn't know that the child she just claimed was Princess Sarah Valtor, youngest daughter of the most feared vampire king in existence. She didn't know that 4-year-old Princess Isara had been searching the kingdom for weeks, following dreams that showed her baby sister's location. She didn't know that in exactly 7 days, that little girl would point at Maya in a crowded marketplace and speak 3 words that would shatter a king's carefully constructed world. That's my mama. If you're hearing this story from the midnight streets of Ashenmoor to the farthest vampire territories, stay until the very end. Subscribe now and comment where you're listening from, because this tale of discarded royalty and unexpected family is about to change everything you thought you knew about love, blood, and destiny. Act I. The life before, 6 months earlier. The doomed birth. King Darius Valtor had ruled the Eclipse Dominion for 3 centuries with calculated precision. Cold, strategic, merciless when necessary. His subjects whispered that frost ran through his veins instead of blood. But when Queen Elara went into labor 6 months early, the Ice King shattered. Save them both, he commanded the healers, his voice fracturing around the edges. I don't care what it costs. Save them. The head healer, an ancient woman whose hands had delivered 1,000 vampire children, met his desperate gaze with terrible pity. Your Majesty, the younger twin is wrong. The magic surrounding her is dark, twisted. She's draining the queen's life force. Then fix it, Darius snarled, crimson eyes blazing. Your healers. Heal. We can save the queen and the healthy twin, the healer said quietly. Or we can try to save all 3 and likely lose everyone. You must choose, my king. 4-year-old Princess Isara stood in the hallway outside, her small hands pressed against the door, her inherited magic allowing her to feel what was happening beyond. She felt her mother's agony. Felt the struggle of 2 tiny souls fighting for life. Felt something else, a connection to one of those souls so profound it made her gasp. Sister, her magic whispered. Sister needs help. But no one was listening to a child. Inside, Elara made the choice for them all. With the last of her strength, she gripped Darius's hand and whispered words that would haunt him forever. Save Isara's sister. Our daughter deserves a chance. No, Darius begged, his composure crumbling. Elara, please. Promise me, she breathed. Promise, you'll protect them both, no matter what darkness comes. I promise. He sobbed. I swear it. Queen Elara died with those words echoing in the birthing chamber. The healthy twin, Isara's full sister, born first, perfect and crying, was placed in Darius's arms. The younger one, the cursed one, was wrapped hastily and taken away by healers who looked at her with barely concealed revulsion. Darius Valtor, shattered by grief, held one daughter while the other was spirited into darkness. And in his anguish, he forgot his promise. The curse's truth. What the healers called a curse was actually a mate bond forming impossibly early, a connection between the infant princess and her destined guardian. The magic was ancient, unprecedented, and terrifying to those who witnessed it. The child is an abomination, High Counselor Mordain declared 3 days after the queen's death. She killed her own mother. Prophecy speaks of a cursed heir who will bring ruin to the vampire throne. She's an infant, Commander Karen protested, one of the few loyal to the king's promise. You speak of executing a child for the crime of being born. I speak of protecting the realm, Mordain said coldly, and protecting our king from the thing that murdered his beloved. Darius sat on his throne, holding firstborn daughter Isara, staring at nothing. The grief had frozen him solid again, turned him back into the Ice King who felt nothing, who calculated everything. Where is the younger twin? He asked, his voice mechanical. Mordain and the council exchanged glances. She has been secured, Your Majesty. In isolation, where her curse cannot spread. She's my daughter. She was your daughter, Mordain corrected gently. But she took your queen from you. From all of us. The merciful thing. Get out, Darius said quietly. Your Majesty. Get out. The king's roar shook the throne room. Isara whimpered against his chest. They left. And in his arms, 4-year-old Isara looked up at her father with ancient eyes and whispered, Papa, where's sister? I can feel her crying. Hush, little one, Darius said, his voice breaking. Your sister isn't here anymore. But she needs us, Isara insisted. I can hear her in my dreams. She's so cold, Papa. So alone. Darius closed his eyes. He'd made a promise to a dying woman. But grief is a poison, and it was already twisting that promise into something unrecognizable. The abandonment. 6 months after Queen Alara's death, High Counselor Mordain came to the king with a solution. The cursed twin grows stronger, he said. The mate bond magic intensifies. Soon it will be uncontrollable. We must act. What do you propose? Darius asked, his voice hollow. He'd barely spoken Sarah's name since the funeral. Barely acknowledged her existence. The pain of seeing her, seeing Alara's eyes in that tiny face, was unbearable. Remove her from the Dominion entirely, Mordain said. To the mortal realm. She'll be cared for. Found by humans who won't fear her magic. It was a lie. Mordain had no intention of ensuring the child's safety. But Darius, drowning in grief and guilt, convinced himself it was mercy. Do it, he said finally. Tonight. Before I change my mind. Commander Karen, who'd been standing guard, stepped forward. Your Majesty, you promised the queen. The queen is dead. Darius roared, grief erupting into rage. She's dead because of that child's curse. Because of magic none of us understand. I won't risk Isar. I won't risk the kingdom. The younger twin leaves. Tonight. That night, they wrapped Princess Sarah in silk and transported her to the mortal city of Ashenmoor. And in an act of breathtaking cruelty, Mordain ordered her left not at an orphanage or hospital, but in a dumpster behind a diner, discarded like refuse, with a note designed to ensure no one would save her. Commander Karen, forced to obey but sickened by the act, made one small rebellion. He tucked a hospital bracelet onto the infant's wrist, proof of her identity, should anyone care to look. Then he left the crying child in the dark and returned to report the deed done. In the palace, 4-year-old Isara woke screaming. Sister! Sister's gone. Papa, she's so scared, she thinks no one loves her, Papa please. But Darius held her close and whispered lies about how her sister was safe, was better off, was somewhere she could be happy. And he tried desperately to believe them. Act 2, 6 years of silence. Maya's life. Maya Caldwell knew all about being discarded. At 17, pregnant and alone after her boyfriend vanished the moment he saw the positive test. At 18, homeless with a newborn after her parents threw her out. At 20, working 3 jobs to keep Lily fed while living in a studio apartment with walls so thin she could hear her neighbors' every argument. She knew what it meant to be thrown away. So when she found that impossible infant in the dumpster, wrapped in silk that spoke of wealth and care before the abandonment, she didn't hesitate. "You're coming home with me," she whispered to the baby, who had finally stopped crying and was watching her with those strange crimson eyes. "I don't know what you are or why someone left you here, but nobody deserves to be trash." Lily, 6 years old and wise beyond her years, took one look at the baby and asked, "Is she staying, Mama?" "Just until I figure out where she came from," Maya said, though they both knew that was a lie they'd tell themselves. They named her Sarah, the name on the hospital bracelet, the only clue to her identity. Over the following days, Maya tried to find the child's family. Called hospitals. Filed reports. Searched missing persons databases. Nothing. It was as if Sarah didn't exist in any official capacity. And then strange things started happening. The first night, when Sarah wouldn't stop crying, Maya held her close and hummed a lullaby her own grandmother had sung. The moment the melody touched the air, Sarah quieted, and the entire apartment filled with soft, silver light that seemed to emanate from the baby's skin. "Mama," Lily whispered, eyes wide. "Is she magic?" I don't know, sweetheart." The second night, a man in an expensive suit appeared at the diner, watching Maya through the window with eyes that gleamed red in the streetlight. She called the police. By the time they arrived, he'd vanished. The third night, Maya woke to find Sarah floating 3 feet above her makeshift crib, still sleeping peacefully, surrounded by that same silver glow. "Okay," Maya breathed, catching the floating infant. "So you're definitely not human. That's fine. That's totally fine. We can work with that." She couldn't go to the authorities. What would she even say? "Hello, I found a potentially vampire baby in a dumpster, and she glows and floats. Please don't take her away or dissect her for science." So Maya did what she'd always done. She survived. She kept Sarah hidden during the day. Worked her shifts at the diner with the baby strapped to her chest in the kitchen where customers couldn't see. Told the few people who asked that Sarah was her niece, temporarily staying with them. And slowly, impossibly, they became a family. Lily adored her new sister. Would read to Sarah for hours, making up elaborate stories about princesses and magic. Sarah would watch her with those impossibly knowing crimson eyes, as if understanding every word. Maya loved Sarah with the fierce, protective love of someone who'd chosen this child deliberately, who'd pulled her from literal garbage and declared her worth saving. But sometimes, in the dark hours before dawn, Maya would hold Sarah and wonder about the person who'd wrapped her in silk before throwing her away. Wonder what kind of monster could discard something so precious. Wonder if that monster would ever come looking for what they'd lost. Isara's dreams. 4-year-old Princess Isara Valtor was not adjusting well to life without her sister. Every night she dreamed, saw Sarah through the mate bond that connected them across impossible distance. Saw her sister in the arms of a woman with tired eyes and gentle hands. Saw Lily, who Isara somehow knew was important, was connected to their destiny. "Papa," she would say every morning, tugging on Darius's formal robes. "I dreamed about sister again. She has a new mama now. A human mama who found her." "Isara," Darius would say, his voice strained, "your sister is gone. You need to accept that." "But I can feel her," Isara insisted. "She's not dead, Papa. She's alive and she's happy. The human mama sings to her." Darius's jaw would tighten. The grief and guilt were constant companions now, but he'd learned to function through them. Learned to rule despite the gaping wound in his chest. He told himself he'd done the right thing. That Sarah was better off away from the dominion, away from the curse and the prophecy. That somewhere, somehow, she was safe. But the dreams wouldn't stop. By the time Isara turned 6, the visions had intensified. She could see details now, the cramped apartment, the diner where Maya worked, even the street signs in Ashenmoor. "Papa," she said one morning, her small face set with unusual determination. I know where sister is. I can take us there. I saw enough, Darius said sharply. Too sharply. He saw her flinch and immediately regretted it. I'm sorry, little one. But your sister is alive, Isara interrupted, her voice taking on an eerie quality that made even the king pause. And one day soon, we're going to find her. The dreams don't lie, Papa. You know they don't. She was right. Vampire royalties sometimes developed prophetic gifts, and Isara's were particularly strong. But Darius couldn't face the truth, that he'd abandoned his daughter, that she'd survived without him, that some human woman had done what he couldn't, chosen to love her despite the danger. So he buried himself in rulership, in duty, in the cold precision of a king who no longer let his heart dictate his choices. But 6 years after Sarah's abandonment, fate intervened. The kingdom was fracturing. Rebel factions questioned Darius's fitness to rule after the queen's death. There were whispers of a curse on the Valtor line, of the king who'd let his wife die and his daughter disappear. High Counselor Mordain, sensing weakness, began consolidating power. And Commander Karen, who'd never forgiven himself for abandoning Sarah, started investigating exactly what had happened that night. The truth was coming, whether Darius was ready or not. Act 3. The Recognition. Market Day. Maya hated market days in Ashenmoor. The crowds. The noise. The way vendors looked at her worn clothes and dismissed her as not worth their attention. But Lily needed new shoes. Her toes were pressing against the worn canvas of her current pair, and Sarah, now 6 months old and impossibly alert for an infant, needed, well, Maya wasn't entirely sure what vampire babies needed, but she was doing her best. Stay close, she told Lily, who held Sarah in a baby sling across her chest. Maya's arms ached from double shifts, and Lily had begged to help carry her baby sister. The marketplace sprawled across Ashenmoor's central square, a chaotic mix of mortal vendors and, Maya had recently learned, supernatural beings who passed through the city. She'd become adept at spotting them, the ones whose movements were too graceful, whose eyes held colors that didn't exist in nature, whose very presence seemed to bend reality. She avoided them carefully. Whatever Sarah was, Maya didn't need supernatural scrutiny. Mama, look. Lily pointed to a vendor selling crystals that seemed to hum with inner light. Pretty. We're here for shoes, sweetheart. Not. Maya's words died as she felt it, a weight pressing against her awareness, like being watched by something ancient and powerful. Her survival instincts, honed by years of poverty and danger, screamed warnings. She turned and saw them. A group of figures moved through the marketplace like darkness given form. Warriors in black armor, their hands resting on weapon hilts. An ancient man whose eyes held centuries. And at the center, a man who made Maya's breath catch despite herself. He was impossibly beautiful in the way of things that should be feared, silver hair falling past broad shoulders, crimson eyes scanning the crowd with predatory precision, an obsidian crown resting on his brow. He wore formal attire that whispered of wealth and power, and moved with the confidence of someone who'd never been denied anything in his immortal existence. Vampire, Maya's instincts supplied. But she couldn't run. Because walking beside the silver-haired king was a little girl who made Maya's heart stop. The child was perhaps 4 years old, with the same silver hair, the same crimson eyes, the same otherworldly beauty. She wore a dress of midnight blue, and held the hand of a scarred warrior who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. And the moment those crimson eyes landed on Sarah, sleeping peacefully against Lily's chest, the little girl froze. "Commander Karen," she whispered, her voice carrying an eerie certainty that made the warrior tense. "Commander, look, it's her. It's sister." The marketplace seemed to hold its breath. The silver-haired king, because Maya suddenly realized with sick certainty that this was Sarah's father, this was the monster who'd abandoned an infant in a dumpster, followed his daughter's gaze. His eyes locked onto Sarah, and something in that perfect, controlled face cracked wide open. "No," he breathed. "It's not possible." But the little girl had already torn free from the commander's grip, was already running through the crowd with supernatural speed. was already reaching Lily with desperate, trembling hands. "Sister," she sobbed, her small fingers gentle as she touched Sarah's sleeping face. "Sister, I found you. I dreamed about you every night. I knew you were alive. I knew it." Lily, to her credit, didn't panic. Just held Sarah protectively and looked at the crying vampire child with surprising gentleness. Are you Sarah's sister?" "Yes," the girl whispered. "My name is Isara. And she's Princess Sarah Valtor. And that," she pointed at the silver-haired king who was now moving toward them like a man in a trance, "is our papa." Maya stepped in front of Lily and both girls, her exhausted body positioning itself as a shield despite knowing it would be useless against supernatural strength. "Stay back," she said, her voice steady despite her terror. "I don't know who you are, but—" "You found her," the king interrupted, his voice wrecked. "You found my daughter." He was 10 feet away now, close enough that Maya could see the devastation in his eyes, the way his hands trembled before he locked them behind his back, the barely controlled emotion warring across his perfect features. "You found her," he repeated, "and you kept her." "Someone threw her in a dumpster," Maya said flatly, anger cutting through fear. "Wrapped her in silk and left her to die with a note calling her cursed. So yes, I kept her. Because that's what you do when you find an abandoned baby. You don't ask questions. You don't wonder if she's normal. You just love her." The marketplace had gone silent. Every eye was fixed on this confrontation. Darius Valtor, vampire king of the Eclipse Dominion, looked at this exhausted human woman who'd stepped between him and his daughters without hesitation. Looked at the older human child holding Sarah with protective care. Looked at Sarah herself, 6 months old and healthy and alive when he'd convinced himself she was probably dead. "Who are you?" he asked. "Maya Caldwell." She lifted her chin. "And Sarah is mine. I found her. I saved her. I've fed her and held her and loved her for 6 months. So if you think you can just take her because you've got a crown and some vampires—" "Take her?" Darius looked stricken. "No, I wouldn't." He stopped, seeming to realize how that sounded. "I abandoned her. I let them tell me she was cursed, that she killed her mother. I let my grief convince me that removing her was mercy instead of cruelty." He took one careful step closer. Maya held her ground. "And you," he continued, his voice raw, "you saw an abandoned infant, an obviously supernatural abandoned infant who could have killed you, who could have been dangerous in ways you couldn't imagine, and you didn't hesitate. You chose her." "She's a baby," Maya said simply. "She needed someone. So I became that someone." Isara had pressed herself against Lily now, staring at her sleeping sister with tears streaming down her small face. "She grew," she whispered. "She's bigger than in my dreams. And she's so beautiful, and someone actually loved her, and Papa, you were wrong, she wasn't cursed, she was just lonely." The little girl's words broke something in the king. He sank to his knees right there in the marketplace, in front of dozens of witnesses, his careful control shattering completely. "I know," he choked out. "God and blood, I know. I was wrong about everything." Commander Karen had moved to stand beside Maya, his scarred face holding something like respect. "Miss Caldwell," he said quietly, "His Majesty has been unwell since the Queen's death. The decision to remove Princess Sarah was made in grief and influenced by poor counsel. He's regretted it every day since." "Has he?" Maya asked coldly. "Because it took him 6 months to come looking." "He thought she was dead," Karen admitted. "High Counselor Mordain told him she'd been placed somewhere safe, then reported she'd died of her condition weeks later. His Majesty only learned the truth 3 days ago when I confessed what actually happened." Maya's anger flickered with something more complicated. She looked at the broken king kneeling in the dirt, at the little girl crying over her rediscovered sister, and felt her certainty waver. "Why now?" she asked. "Why come here now?" It was Isara who answered, her ancient eyes meeting Maya's mortal ones. "Because I wouldn't stop dreaming about sister. Because I told Papa that someone had found her, someone who really loved her. Because the dreams showed me where you lived, and Papa finally listened." Sarah chose that moment to wake. Her crimson eyes opened and she looked directly at Darius, this stranger who was her father, and made a small, curious sound. Then she turned, seeking Maya's scent, and made a different sound. One that clearly meant Mama. Darius flinched as if struck. She doesn't know you, Maya said, not unkindly. To her, you're just another stranger. I know. His voice was barely a whisper. He stood slowly, his composure reassembling itself piece by piece. When he spoke again, it was with the formal authority of a king. Miss Caldwell, I owe you a debt I can never repay. You saved my daughter's life. I didn't save her for a reward, Maya said. I know that too. He paused, something like wonder entering his expression. Which makes what you did even more remarkable. Around them, the marketplace crowd was whispering. The vampire king kneeling. The cursed princess alive. A human woman who defied royalty. Your Majesty, Karen said carefully, the council will hear of this. We should return to the Dominion and what? Darius interrupted. I found my daughter alive and well because a stranger showed her more compassion than her own family. I think the council can wait while I try to understand what that means. He looked at Maya, really looked at her, saw the exhaustion carved into her young face, the worn clothes, the defensive posture of someone who'd learned the world was cruel. Saw the fierce love in her eyes when she glanced at Sarah. May I? He began, then stopped, as if unsure how to ask permission to interact with his own child. May I hold her? Just for a moment. Maya hesitated. Every instinct screamed not to hand Sarah to this man, this king who'd discarded her once already. But Lily spoke up, her child's wisdom cutting through the complexity. Mama, look at his face. He's not scary anymore. He's just sad. And she was right. The vampire king looked devastated, desperate, and achingly hopeful all at once. Maya slowly, carefully, took Sarah from Lily and held her out to Darius. Support her head. And if she cries, I'm taking her back immediately. Darius nodded mutely and accepted his daughter into his arms for the first time since her birth. Sarah looked up at him with those knowing crimson eyes. Studied his face with infant solemnity. Then, impossibly, she smiled, a tiny, gummy smile that shattered what remained of the vampire king's composure. Hello, little one, he whispered, tears finally escaping despite centuries of control. I'm your father. And I am so sorry. Isara pressed against his side, wrapping her small arms around both of them. She forgives you, Papa. I can feel it. The mate bond is settling. She knows we found her. She knows she's not alone anymore. In that moment, with the vampire king holding his lost daughter while the human woman who'd saved her watched with wary eyes, destiny shifted. This wasn't just a reunion. It was the beginning of something unprecedented, something that would challenge kingdoms, defy traditions, and prove that sometimes the truest family is the one you choose. Act 4. The proposition. The confrontation. Absolutely not. Maya's voice cut through the opulent sitting room of the townhouse Darius's people had secured for their meeting. After the marketplace scene, he'd requested, not demanded, she'd noticed, a private conversation. She'd agreed only because Lily and Isara had instantly bonded, and watching her daughter play with a vampire princess while Commander Karen stood guard had a surreal quality she was still processing. Darius stood by the window, Sarah sleeping peacefully in his arms. He'd been holding her for 2 hours now, as if afraid she'd vanish if he set her down. You haven't heard my full proposal, he said carefully. I don't need to. Maya paced, exhaustion and anger making her reckless. You want to take Sarah back to your vampire kingdom. Want to give her a proper life with royalty and magic and all that. But here's the thing, Your Majesty, she's had a proper life. With me. For 6 months, I've been her mother. Not by blood but by choice. And I'm not giving that up. I'm not asking you to. That stopped Maya mid-stride. What? Darius finally looked up from Sarah's sleeping face, and Maya was struck again by the raw vulnerability in his expression, so at odds with the vampire king reputation she'd heard whispered in the marketplace. I'm not asking you to give her up, he repeated quietly. I'm asking you to come with her. To your kingdom? As what, a nanny? As her mother, Darius said, and the simple honesty in his voice made her breath catch. Because that's what you are. Not biologically, but in every way that matters. She reaches for you when she's frightened. Calms at your voice. Knows your heartbeat. You're her mother, Miss Caldwell. And I would be a fool to deny that truth again. Maya sank into a chair, her defenses crumbling. I don't understand. I'm a human waitress who lives in a studio apartment and works 3 jobs. Your world, vampires and magic and kingdoms, I don't belong there. Neither did Sarah, according to my advisors, Darius said with unexpected bitterness. They called her cursed. Claimed she was destroying the realm just by existing. So I let them throw her away. Let them convince me that removing her was strength instead of cowardice. He crossed the room and carefully, so carefully, lowered himself to sit across from Maya, Sarah still cradled against his chest. But you didn't see a curse, he continued. You saw a child who needed love. And you gave it without hesitation, without asking what it would cost you. That's not weakness, Miss Caldwell. That's the kind of strength that built kingdoms. Pretty words, Maya said, though her voice shook. But what happens when your court decides they don't want a human in their precious kingdom? When they realize I'm common and poor and have no magic or status? Will you throw me away too? The question hung between them, sharp and ugly. No, Darius said, and the absolute certainty in his voice made her believe him. I've lost too much to my own cowardice. My wife died, and instead of honoring her last wish, to protect our daughters, both of our daughters, I let grief turn me into the monster everyone fears. I let them take Sarah from me. And I've regretted it every single day since. He looked down at his sleeping daughter, and Maya saw a tear fall onto the infant's silver blanket. You gave her 6 months of love, he continued. 6 months where she knew she mattered, knew she was wanted. I can't give those months back. Can't undo the abandonment. But I can try to give her a future where both her mothers are present. Both her mothers? Maya repeated. Queen Elara died bringing Sarah into this world, Darius said softly. But you gave her the life Elara never got to. So yes, both mothers. One who gave her biological life, one who chose to give her everything else. In the other room, Lily's laughter rang out, followed by Isara's delighted giggle. Maya's heart ached at the sound. Her daughter was happy here, safe here, playing with a friend who understood the weight of being different. And Lily? Maya asked. What happens to my daughter in this plan? She comes too, Darius said immediately. Your family stays together. That's non-negotiable. In fact, he paused, something like vulnerability crossing his face. Isara has been asking if Lily can be her sister too. Apparently, she dreamed about having a human sister who understood both worlds. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. This is insane. I can't just uproot our entire lives because a vampire king shows up and… What life? Darius interrupted gently. Forgive my bluntness, but I've had people investigating since we found you. You work 70 hours a week for barely enough to cover rent. Your daughter wears shoes 2 sizes too small because you can't afford new ones. You're exhausted, isolated, and drowning in a system that won't help you. So this is charity, Maya said flatly. No. This is recognition. His crimson eyes held hers. Recognition that my daughter's survival depended on your strength. Recognition that you deserve better than the world has given you. And recognition that Sarah needs you, as much as she needs me, perhaps more. He stood, still cradling Sarah, and moved to the window. The afternoon light caught his silver hair, and Maya was struck by how ancient he looked in that moment. How many years of loss and regret were carved into his immortal features. I'm not asking you to love me, Darius said quietly. I'm not asking you to pretend we're a traditional family. I'm asking you to let me try to be the father I should have been from the beginning. And to let Sarah have both the parents she deserves, the one who gave her life and the one who saved it. What about your court? Maya asked. Won't they object to a human raising a vampire princess? Let them. Steel entered his voice. I'm the king. My word is law. And if anyone has a problem with the woman who rescued my daughter, they can take it up with me directly. Something in Maya's chest cracked open. She'd been alone for so long, fighting, surviving, protecting Lily against a world that didn't care. The idea that someone wanted to fight with her instead of against her felt impossible. "I need time," she said finally, to talk to Lily, to understand what this would actually mean. "Take all the time you need," Darius said. "I've waited 6 months believing she was dead. I can wait a few more days for you to decide her future." "Your future?" He carefully laid Sarah in Maya's arms, and the infant immediately settled against her chest, seeking her familiar heartbeat. Maya felt something profound in that moment. This impossible child who'd bonded to her completely, who knew her as Mama despite having no biological claim. 3 days, Maya said. "I'll give you an answer in 3 days." Darius nodded. "That's more than fair. In the meantime, please stay here. This house is secure, fully supplied, and you don't need to work or worry about rent. Consider it compensation for the months you've already given Sarah." "And if I say no after 3 days?" Maya challenged. "If I decide to take her and run?" Pain flickered across his face. "Then I'll let you go. I won't chase you or use my power to force your hand. But I will ask that you let Isara visit occasionally. She's found her sister after months of dreams and prayers. Losing Sarah again would break her." Maya looked at him, really looked at the vampire king who'd knelt in a marketplace, who'd cried over his daughter, who was offering her a life she'd never imagined possible. "Okay," she said softly. 3 days. The decision. Maya didn't sleep that first night. She lay in the guest bedroom, which was larger than her entire apartment, Sarah in a bassinet beside the bed, and tried to make sense of everything. Lily had begged to stay. "Mama, Isara showed me her castle in pictures. And Commander Karen said they have libraries bigger than whole buildings. And Sarah would have doctors and magic people who could help her. Please, Mama, please can we stay?" But it wasn't that simple. It was never that simple. On the second morning, Commander Karen knocked on her door. "Miss Caldwell? His Majesty asked me to show you around the Dominion. If you're willing." She was willing. Needed to see what she'd be agreeing to. The vampire kingdom was nothing like she'd imagined. Yes, there was darkness, Gothic architecture, crimson lighting, an undercurrent of predatory power. But there was also beauty. Libraries filled with books older than civilizations. Gardens where night-blooming flowers created perfumes that made her dizzy. Medical facilities with technology that could heal anything. And there were children. Vampire children playing in courtyards, learning magic, laughing with the uncomplicated joy of the young. "Princess Isara has been lonely," Karen said as they watched the children from a balcony. "Since the Queen's death, His Majesty has been difficult to reach. Isara has spent 2 years largely isolated, raised by attendants who keep her safe but don't truly know her." "That's heartbreaking," Maya said. "It is. Which is why when she met your Lily, a child who didn't fear her, didn't treat her as royalty, just wanted to play, something in her came alive again." Karen paused. "I served Queen Alara. She would have loved you, Miss Caldwell. Would have been grateful that someone like you found her daughter." That night, Maya found Darius in the nursery they'd prepared for Sarah. He was standing over an empty crib, holding a small carved wolf, clearly handmade, the work of someone unused to crafting. "I made this for her," he said without looking up. "Before she was born. Before everything fell apart. I was going to give it to her on her first birthday." His voice broke. "But I never got the chance." Maya entered quietly, Sarah asleep against her shoulder. "You can give it to her now." "Can I?" Darius looked at her, and she saw the question behind the words. "Can I be her father? Do I have that right?" "Yes," Maya said softly. She moved to the crib and carefully placed Sarah down, then took the carved wolf and tucked it beside the sleeping infant. "You made a mistake. A terrible one. But you're trying to fix it. That has to count for something." "Why are you being kind to me?" Darius asked. "I abandoned your daughter." "Our daughter," Maya interrupted. "That's what you said, right? That she has 2 mothers? Well, maybe she has 2 parents. The biological one who's learning to love her, and the adoptive one who's been there from the beginning." She saw him process that, saw hope flicker in his ancient eyes. "I've decided," Maya said. "I'm going to say yes." "You are." "Yes." "But not because of the money or the castle or any of that." She looked down at Sarah, sleeping peacefully in her crib. "I'm saying yes because Sarah deserves to know where she came from. Deserves to have her sister, her father, her heritage. And because—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Because I think we could be good for each other. Your kingdom needs to remember that strength isn't just power, it's compassion. And my family needs the security and opportunities this life could give us." Darius looked like he wanted to collapse with relief. "Thank you. God and blood, thank you. I swear to you, Miss Caldwell." "Maya," she interrupted. "If we're doing this, you should call me Maya." "Maya," he repeated, and something in the way he said her name made her breath catch. "I swear to you, I will spend every day proving you made the right choice." "One condition," Maya said. "Lily and Sarah grow up together. As sisters. No adopted, or biological, labels. No distinction between royal and common. They're family. Period." "Agreed," Darius said immediately. "In fact, I'd like to propose something. A formal adoption. Make Lily my ward, give her royal status. She'd be Princess Lily, equal to Isara in every way." Maya's eyes widened. You'd do that?" "Maya, you saved my daughter's life. The least I can do is ensure yours has every opportunity. Both of yours." Before Maya could respond, before she could process the enormity of what he was offering, Sarah woke with a cry. Both of them moved toward her simultaneously, their hands meeting over the crib as they reached to comfort her. For a moment, they froze, vampire king and human woman, connected by this impossible child they both loved. Then Darius stepped back. "You should pick her up. She knows your touch better." But Maya reached for his hand instead. "Together. We pick her up together." And they did. Maya lifted Sarah while Darius supported her from below, their hands touching, their bodies close as they held this precious life between them. Sarah looked up at them both and smiled. Act V. The Return. The journey to the Eclipse Dominion took 3 days. Maya had insisted on traveling slowly, giving herself and Lily time to adjust. By the time they arrived at the castle gates, she was terrified. The fortress rose from the landscape like something carved from nightmares. Obsidian towers, crimson lights, guards in black armor. Everything whispered danger, power, darkness. Lily squeezed her hand. "It's okay, Mama. Isara says it's scary on purpose. To keep bad things out. But inside it's actually kind of pretty." "How does Isara seem to know everything?" Maya muttered. "She dreams," Lily said simply. "Dreams show her stuff." The carriage rolled through gates that opened without any visible hand touching them. Maya held Sarah closer, her heart hammering. Then Isara appeared, running across the courtyard in her midnight blue dress, Commander Karen jogging behind her. "Lily, you're here. Come on, I want to show you the library and the gardens and my room and—" "Isara," Darius said gently, emerging from the castle entrance. "Let them breathe. They just arrived." But Lily had already taken Isara's hand, and the two girls were racing toward the castle entrance, giggling. Karen followed, shaking his head but smiling. "Well," Maya said, watching them go. "I guess that answers whether they'll get along." "Come," Darius said, offering his arm. "Let me show you your chambers. And introduce you to the staff." The introductions did not go well. The moment they entered the great hall, Maya felt dozens of hostile eyes fix on her. Vampires in formal attire, their expressions ranging from shock to outrage. "Your Majesty," an elegant woman in midnight blue robes said coldly. "Surely you don't mean to—" "Allow me to introduce Maya Caldwell," Darius interrupted, his voice carrying absolute authority. "The woman who saved Princess Sarah's life when we failed her. She and her daughter will be residing in the royal wing. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me privately." Silence fell. Then whispers erupted, scandalized, furious, calculating. Maya lifted her chin and met their stares. She'd faced worse. had survived poverty and abandonment and a world that wanted her to fail. A bunch of judgmental vampires didn't scare her. Well, maybe they scared her a little. Lady Seraphine, Darius said, addressing the woman in blue. I trust you'll ensure Miss Caldwell and her daughter have everything they need? Of course, Your Majesty, the woman said with icy courtesy. But her eyes promised future conflict. Over the following days, Maya learned to navigate the vampire court. It was exhausting, constant judgment, whispered insults, nobles who treated her like an interloping servant. But she had allies. Commander Karen assigned himself as her personal guard. I owe you this, he said simply. I failed Princess Sarah. I won't fail you. Isara appointed herself as Lily's protector and guide. Anyone who's mean to Lily's mama is mean to my sister, she declared to the entire dining hall. And Papa says being mean to my sisters is a crime. Darius himself was complicated. He kept his distance, respecting Maya's space. But she'd catch him watching her with Sarah, watching the way Maya rocked the infant to sleep, sang lullabies, made silly faces that pulled out those precious baby giggles. You're a wonderful mother, he said one evening, standing in the nursery doorway while Maya changed Sarah's diaper. I'm an exhausted, confused human who's barely keeping her head above water, Maya corrected. Then you're doing better than I did, Darius said quietly. When Alara died, I fell apart. Let grief turn me into something cold and cruel. You faced poverty and abandonment and struggle, and you still found it in yourself to love a child who wasn't yours. Maya secured the fresh diaper and lifted Sarah into her arms. She is mine. Maybe not biologically, but in every way that counts. I know, Darius said, which is why I asked the Royal Council to make it official. What? He pulled a document from his coat. Formal adoption papers. They're backdated to the day you found her. As far as the Dominion is concerned, you're Princess Sarah's legal mother, equal to Alara in status and rights. Maya's hands shook as she took the papers. Saw her name, Maya Caldwell, mother to Princess Sarah Valtor, in elegant script. Why? She whispered. Because it's the truth, Darius said simply. And because I want there to be no question of your place here. You're not a guest or a caretaker. You're family. Something shifted between them in that moment. Understanding, respect, the first fragile threads of something more complicated. Act 6, The Prophecy. 3 weeks after Maya's arrival, the threats began. The first note appeared under her door. Human filth doesn't belong in vampire halls. Leave before you're removed. The second was more direct. The cursed air will destroy us all. You're helping that destruction. Choose wisely. Maya brought them to Darius, whose expression turned murderous. I'll find who's doing this, he said, his voice dangerous. You'll what? Execute half your court? Maya challenged. They're scared. They see me as an outsider, a threat. Notes are just the beginning. She was right. The assassination attempt came a week later. Maya was walking through the gardens with Sarah when 3 cloaked figures appeared. She saw the blades, saw the intent, and did the only thing she could, threw herself over Sarah, making her body a shield. Pain exploded across her back as steel found flesh. But before the second strike could fall, power erupted through the garden. Darius appeared like vengeance incarnate, moving faster than Maya's eyes could track. He caught the assassin's blade with his bare hand, not even flinching as it cut through supernatural flesh, and threw the attacker into a tree hard enough to crack stone. The other 2 fled. Darius turned, and Maya saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before, absolute, consuming rage barely controlled. You're bleeding. It's not deep, Maya gasped, though her back felt like it was on fire. Sarah, is she? She's fine. You protected her. His hands were shaking as he carefully gathered both of them, Maya bleeding, Sarah crying but unharmed, into his arms. You protected her and nearly died. Of course I did, Maya said, confused why this was even a question. She's my daughter. Something in Darius's expression cracked. He carried them both back to the castle, barking orders to guards. Within minutes, healers surrounded Maya, knitting flesh with magic that felt like ice and fire mixed. Later, when she was bandaged and Sarah was asleep, Darius came to her room. "I failed you," he said without preamble. "I brought you here, promised you'd be safe, and someone tried to kill you in my own garden. It wasn't your fault." "It was entirely my fault," he interrupted harshly. "My cord is fractured. Half believe Sarah is cursed. Others think you're manipulating me. And I've been too focused on rebuilding my relationship with my daughters to see the danger building." He sank into the chair beside her bed, his head in his hands. "There's a prophecy," he said finally. "Ancient. It says the cursed heir will either save the vampire kingdom or destroy it, depending on who raises her. If she's raised with love and compassion, she'll become the greatest queen we've ever known. If she's raised with fear and cruelty, she'll burn it all to ash." Maya's breath caught. "That's why they abandoned her. They were afraid." "They were cowards," Darius spat. "But I was the greatest coward of all. I let them convince me that removing her was the safe choice. That the prophecy could be avoided if she just didn't exist." "But she does exist," Maya said softly. "And she's being raised with love. So the prophecy should save us all," Darius finished. "Which is exactly what terrifies those who want the old ways preserved. They don't want a queen who values compassion over conquest. They want power, tradition, blood purity." He looked up at her, and she saw genuine fear in his ancient eyes. "They'll keep coming for you," he said. "For Sarah. For anything that represents the change she'll bring. And I don't know how to stop them without starting a civil war." Maya sat up despite the pain, meeting his gaze. "Then we make them understand. Show them that Sarah isn't cursed, she's blessed. That the prophecy isn't something to fear, but something to embrace." "How?" "By living it," Maya said simply. "By raising her exactly as we have been, with love and patience and the belief that she's meant for something greater than fear. And by not hiding who she is or who I am or what we represent." Darius studied her for a long moment. "You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most foolish." "Maybe both," Maya admitted. "But I didn't survive 6 years of poverty and struggle just to hide now. If your court wants to see what a cursed heir looks like when she's actually loved, let's show them." Something like admiration entered Darius's expression. "You continue to surprise me, Maya Caldwell." "Good," she said. "Keep me interesting and maybe you won't get bored." It was meant as a joke, but something shifted in the air between them. Awareness, attraction, possibility. Darius cleared his throat and stood. "And tomorrow, we'll start showing the kingdom exactly what they should have embraced from the beginning." As he left, Maya touched her fingers to her lips, wondering when she'd started noticing the way his eyes lingered on her, the gentle care in his touch, the protective fury that rose when she was threatened. This is dangerous, she thought. Falling for a vampire king who threw away his daughter once already. But her heart, traitorous thing that it was, didn't seem to care about danger anymore. Act 7. The Transformation. Over the following months, something remarkable happened. Maya began teaching Sarah deliberately, consciously showing the court what raising the cursed heir actually looked like. She held Sarah in public, hummed lullabies in the great hall, let nobles see the gentle care that went into every feeding, every diaper change, every moment of connection. "See," she seemed to say without words. "This is what you were afraid of. A baby being loved." Isara and Lily became inseparable, and their friendship became a bridge between human and vampire worlds. They played in courtyards where both races could see them, the vampire princess and the human girl, laughing without fear, learning each other's customs, creating their own mixed traditions. And slowly, impossibly, attitudes began to shift. Younger vampires started approaching Maya with curiosity instead of hostility. Servants who'd once avoided eye contact began greeting her by name. Even some of the nobles softened, drawn by Sarah's clear contentment and Darius's obvious transformation. Because Darius had changed too. He smiled now. Genuine smiles that lit up his ancient face and made him look almost mortal. He played with Isara and Lily, created terrible voices for bedtime stories, built elaborate block towers just so Sarah could knock them down. The Ice King had thawed, and his people noticed. "Your Majesty seems happy," Commander Karen observed one afternoon, watching Darius chase the girls through the garden while Maya rocked Sarah on a bench nearby. "I am happy," Darius admitted. "For the first time since Alara's death, I can imagine a future that holds joy instead of just duty." "It suits you," Karen said. Then, more quietly, the Queen would have approved. Miss Caldwell, she would have loved that someone with such strength found Sarah. But not everyone was pleased with the changes. High Counselor Mordain, the one who'd orchestrated Sarah's abandonment, watched the king's transformation with growing fury. He'd spent months consolidating power, convincing nobles that Darius was unfit to rule, preparing for a coup. The human's arrival had ruined everything. "We need to remove her," he hissed to his conspirators in a hidden chamber. "She's making the king weak, making him sentimental. If she stays, we'll never install a proper heir, never return to traditional vampire strength." "The Crimson Veil will handle it," one of his followers said. "They're already planning something. Within the week, the human will be gone." But Mordain underestimated two things. First, he underestimated Commander Karen's guilt and dedication. Karen had failed Sarah once. He wouldn't fail her family again. Second, he underestimated the mate bond that had been building between Darius and Maya. Not the supernatural kind that vampires sometimes experienced, but something more profound. The slow, inevitable connection between two broken people learning to be whole. Act 8. The breaking point. The attack came during the spring equinox celebration. The entire court had gathered in the grand ballroom. Nobles in formal attire, servants bringing endless trays of blood wine, music that seemed to pour from the very walls. Darius had insisted Maya attend, despite her protests about not belonging. "You belong because I say you belong," he'd said firmly. "And because I want you there." So Maya wore a dress provided by the royal seamstress, deep emerald that somehow made her tired eyes sparkle, and stood in a ballroom surrounded by vampires who ranged from curious to hostile. Lily and Isara danced together, their laughter bright and uncomplicated. Sarah slept in Maya's arms, content despite the noise. And Darius couldn't take his eyes off Maya. "You're staring, Your Majesty," she said when he approached. "Can you blame me?" His voice held an unfamiliar warmth. "You're the most interesting person in this room." "I'm literally holding a baby and trying not to trip over this dress," Maya protested. "Exactly. Everyone else is performing. You're just being." He paused, something vulnerable entering his expression. "Maya, I want to ask you something. After the celebration in private, if you're willing." The explosion shattered the moment. The ballroom's western wall erupted inward in a blast of magical force. Rebels in crimson masks poured through the breach. Members of the Crimson Veil, the faction that wanted traditional vampire rule restored. "Death to the cursed heir," someone screamed. "Death to the human who corrupts our king." Chaos erupted. Guards engaged the attackers. Nobles fled. And Maya, holding Sarah, found herself surrounded. 3 masked figures closed in. Maya backed toward a pillar, her only thought protecting the infant in her arms. She had no weapon, no magic, nothing but her body and her desperate love. The first attacker raised a blade. And Darius appeared like death incarnate. He moved faster than mortal eyes could track, a blur of silver and shadow and absolute fury. The attacker's blade never fell. Darius caught the man's wrist and twisted, the crack of bone audible even over the screaming. "You threaten my daughter?" His voice was barely recognizable, ancient power-given form. "You come into my home and threaten my family?" The other attackers fled. But more were coming. Maya could see them through the shattered wall, could hear their battle cries. "The Prince and Princess Lily." Commander Karen's voice cut through chaos. "They're trying to reach the children." Darius's head snapped toward where Isara and Lily had been dancing. Empty space. The girls were gone. "Maya, stay here," Darius commanded, already moving. "Karen, guard them with your—" "No," Maya interrupted. "The girls are together. Isara would have taken Lily somewhere safe, She dreams, remember? She knows things. We need to trust her. She's 4 years old. And she's your daughter, Maya said firmly. Trust her the way you've learned to trust Sarah. Trust that your children are stronger than you think. Darius hesitated, visibly torn. Then nodded. Find them. I'll handle the veil. What happened next would become legend in the Eclipse Dominion. Darius Voltor, Vampire King, unleashed the full extent of his power for the first time in centuries. He didn't just fight the Crimson Veil, he decimated them. Moved through their ranks like a force of nature, disarming, subduing, breaking their attack with surgical precision. I am patient, he said, his voice carrying across the battlefield. I am merciful. I have given you years to accept change, to understand that strength can coexist with compassion. He caught another attacker mid-strike, throwing the man back through the shattered wall. But threaten my family? His eyes blazed crimson. Threaten my daughters? Threaten the woman who saved them when I failed. Power exploded outward from him, raw, ancient magic that made the very stones of the castle tremble. And you will learn why kings are feared. Within minutes, it was over. The Crimson Veil lay defeated, their masks torn away to reveal nobles Maya recognized. Counselors who'd smiled to her face while plotting her death. Guards who'd sworn loyalty while planning betrayal. And at the center of it all, being dragged forward by Commander Karen, was High Counselor Mordain. Your Majesty, Mordain said, trying for dignity despite his bound hands. I acted for the realm's good. You acted for power, Darius interrupted coldly. You orchestrated my daughter's abandonment. Convinced me she was cursed when the only curse was your ambition. You used my grief to manipulate me, and when that stopped working, you tried to murder the woman who saved her. He stepped closer to Mordain, and Maya saw something in his expression that was purely predatory. Tell me, Darius said softly, why shouldn't I execute you right now? Because that's not who you are anymore, Maya said. Every head turned toward her. She still held Sarah, who'd somehow slept through the entire attack. And beside her now stood Isara and Lily, hand in hand, both unharmed. We hid in the dream passages, Isara explained, looking proud. The ones only royal blood can access. Lily was really brave, she didn't even cry. You're not the king you were before, Maya continued, walking toward Darius. Before, you made decisions based on fear and manipulation. Let people convince you that removing problems was the same as solving them. But that's not who you are now. She stood before him, meeting his eyes despite the ancient power still radiating from his body. Now you're the king who kneels in marketplaces, she said softly. Who builds block towers for children? Who chose compassion over convenience? So no, you won't execute Mordain. You'll give him the trial he tried to deny Sarah, fair, just, and merciful. The rage in Darius's expression slowly banked, control reasserting itself. He looked at Mordain with something like pity. Exile, he declared. Stripped of title, lands, and power. Let him live as a mortal among humans, experiencing the weakness he so despised. His voice hardened. And if he ever returns to vampire lands, the sentence will be death. Mordain was dragged away, and the defeated Veil members with him. Darius turned to Maya, and she saw that his hands were shaking. Are you hurt? The children. We're fine, Maya said. Because of you. Because you protected us. I should have seen it coming, Darius said, his composure cracking. Should have anticipated. Stop, Maya interrupted. You can't predict everything. Can't protect us from every threat. But you showed up when it mattered. That's what counts. She reached for his hand, bloodied from battle, trembling from unleashed power, and squeezed it. Thank you, she said simply. For choosing us. For fighting for us. For being the father and king your daughters need. Darius looked at her, really looked at her, this exhausted human woman in a borrowed dress, holding his daughter, comforting him despite having just survived an assassination attempt. Maya, he began, and there was something in his voice she'd never heard before. But before he could finish, Sarah woke with a cry. Immediate, both parents moved, Darius's hands supporting Maya's arms, both of them swaying in unconscious synchronization to soothe the infant. Isara and Lily watched them with knowing smiles. "I told you," Isara whispered to her human sister. "I told you they were going to be a family. The dreams never lie." Final act. The choice. 3 days after the attack, Darius summoned Maya to his private chambers. She came, her heart hammering, Sarah sleeping peacefully in her arms. The past months had blurred the lines between duty and desire, between gratitude and something deeper. She was falling for him. She knew it. Tried to deny it. Failed miserably. "Maya," Darius said when she entered. He looked nervous, an expression so at odds with the Vampire King that she almost laughed. "I've been trying to find the right words for weeks now. And I've realized there are no right words. Just truth." He crossed to her, stopped a careful distance away. "You saved my daughter's life when I abandoned her," he began. "You gave her 6 months of love I can never give back. You came to my kingdom despite the danger, despite having every reason to refuse. You've endured hostility, assassination attempts, and a court that wants you gone." Maya waited, barely breathing. "And through all of it," Darius continued, his voice rough with emotion, "you've shown me what real strength looks like. Not power or dominance or control, but compassion, patience, and the courage to choose love even when it's terrifying." He slowly, carefully, reached into his coat and withdrew a ring. Not elaborate, simple silver with a small stone that seemed to hold captured moonlight. "This was Ilara's," he said softly. "She wore it before she became queen, before duty and politics complicated everything. It represented choice, her choice to marry me not for alliance or power, but because we loved each other." He took a breath. "Maya Caldwell, I'm not asking you to be queen. I'm not asking you to take Ilara's place or compete with her memory. I'm asking you to be my partner, my equal. The woman who reminds me every day that being a king means being human, means being vulnerable and fallible and capable of growth." He sank to one knee, and Maya's vision blurred with tears. "I'm asking you to marry me," Darius said. "To be mother to all our daughters, Sarah and Isara both. To help me rule a kingdom that desperately needs your compassion. And most of all, to let me spend the rest of our lives, whether that's your mortal years or an eternity if we can find a way, proving that you are the best choice I ever made." Maya looked down at him. At the Vampire King kneeling before her with hope and fear wearing in his ancient eyes. At the ring that represented not replacement but continuation, Ilara's choice to love, now offered to Maya to choose the same. She thought about the past months. The transformation of this broken family into something whole. The way Isara and Lily had become true sisters. The way Sarah laughed now, secure in the knowledge that she was loved by multiple parents. She thought about Darius, cold and distant when they met, now warm and present and learning to be soft again. Learning to trust. Learning to love without fear. "Yes," she said, her voice cracking. "Yes, I'll marry you. Not because of the kingdom or the security or any practical reason. But because somewhere between the marketplace and now, I fell in love with you. With all of you, the grieving father, the learning king, the man who kneels when he should be standing proud." Darius's breath caught. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it warmed immediately, as if recognizing its new wearer. Then he stood, carefully took Sarah from her arms and placed the infant in her bassinet nearby. When he turned back, his eyes held a question. Maya answered by closing the distance between them and kissing him. It was gentle, tentative, profound, the kiss of two people who'd survived darkness and chosen light together. When they finally parted, both were trembling. "The court will object," Maya warned. "They'll say I'm manipulating you, that I'm unworthy." "Let them," Darius said fiercely. "You're the woman who saved my daughter. Who taught me to love again. Who stood between my family and death without hesitation. If that's not worthy, then nothing is." He cupped her face with infinite gentleness. "I spent centuries being what others expected. Strong, cold, perfect. But you've shown me that the greatest strength is allowing yourself to be imperfect, vulnerable, human." "You're a vampire," Maya pointed out, laughing through tears. A vampire who's learning to be human again, he corrected. Thanks to you. Epilogue. 1 year later. The coronation was simple but profound. Maya Caldwell, now Maya Valtor, stood beside Darius in the great hall, wearing a crown of silver and moonstone. Not Alara's crown, that was preserved in the Queen's memorial chamber, but a new one designed specifically for her. I present Queen Maya, Darius announced to the assembled court. Partner, advisor, and mother to our princesses. She who saved the cursed heir and taught us all that compassion is not weakness but the ultimate strength. The applause was not universal. Some nobles looked resigned. Others genuinely pleased. A few openly hostile. Maya didn't care. Because at the front of the hall, Lily and Asara held Sarah between them, now 18 months old and toddling confidently. The three sisters smiled up at their parents, and in that moment, Maya knew everything had been worth it. Later, in the private family chambers, Darius pulled her close. Any regrets? About marrying a vampire king and becoming stepmother to 2 vampire princesses while raising a third? Maya pretended to think. Seems totally normal. Darius laughed. The sound still surprised her with its warmth. I love you, Maya Valtor. I love you too, she said. Even though you're dramatically overpowered and could snap me like a twig. I would never. I know, Maya interrupted, kissing him. That's why I said yes. In the nursery, Sarah played with her sisters, their laughter filling the space. She had no memory of the dumpster where she'd been found, no trauma from the abandonment. All she knew was love, from the father who'd learned to choose her, from the mother who'd saved her, from the sisters who'd never let her be alone again. The cursed heir had become the blessed child, exactly as prophecy predicted. And the kingdom that had tried to throw her away learned, slowly, painfully, but genuinely, that sometimes the things we fear most are actually the salvation we desperately need.